David Chen's eyes snapped open in the darkness. Something was wrong. His bedroom was silent, the kind of silent that made your ears ring. Outside, the city slept. No cars, no voices, just the hum of the air conditioner and the soft tick-tick-tick of the clock on his nightstand. 3:17 a.m. David turned over, pulling the silk sheets up to his chin. He closed his eyes. He needed sleep. Today he had 3 meetings. Important meetings. Millions of dollars hung in the balance. Then he heard it again. Music. Faint. Muffled. Like someone had wrapped a radio in blankets and hidden it somewhere far away. David sat up, his heart beginning to pound. Was someone in the house? Had someone broken in? He reached for his phone on the nightstand, his fingers trembling slightly. The screen lit up his face in the darkness. No alerts. No messages from the security system. Everything was fine, but the music continued. And then laughter. Baby laughter. Michael and Matthew. David's heart dropped into his stomach. His twin sons were 8 months old. They should be asleep. They were always asleep at this hour. Maria, their nanny, had told him they slept through the night now. Like little angels, she'd said with a smile. So why were they awake? And why was there music? David threw off his covers and stood up. The wooden floor was cold beneath his bare feet. He grabbed his robe from the chair beside his bed and wrapped it around himself, tying the belt tight. The hallway stretched before him like a dark tunnel. His mansion had 32 rooms, but suddenly it felt too big, too empty. The kind of empty that made you remember you were alone. Well, not completely alone. He had the boys, and he had Maria. David crept down the hallway, following the sound. The music grew louder with each step. It was a cheerful tune, something with guitars and drums and a woman's voice singing in Spanish. And underneath it, the delighted squeals of his sons. What in the world was going on? The nursery door was cracked open, and warm light spilled out into the dark hallway. David pressed himself against the wall and peered through the gap. What he saw made him freeze. The nursery was painted peach, soft and warm like a sunset. 2 cribs sat against the far wall, but both were empty. Michael and Matthew were on the floor, sitting on a thick, fluffy rug, their hands clapping together in jerky, uncoordinated baby movements. They were laughing, not just giggling, belly laughing, the kind of pure, uncontrollable joy that only babies can make. And in the center of the room, dancing like her life depended on it, was Maria. David's mouth fell open. Maria wore her navy blue uniform, the one she always wore during the day. But on her hands were bright yellow cleaning gloves, the kind she used to scrub the kitchen sink. She had wireless headphones over her ears, and she was dancing, not a slow, gentle sway. Real dancing. Her hips moved side to side. Her arms swung above her head. She spun in circles, then dropped low to ground, then popped back up again. The yellow gloves waved in the air like flags. Michael squealed and slapped the floor. Matthew kicked his chubby legs and fell backward, laughing so hard his whole face turned red. Maria didn't notice. Her eyes were closed. She was lost in the music, lost in the dance, lost in something David couldn't understand. He stood there, frozen, watching through the crack in the door. His mind raced. How long had this been going on? Why hadn't she told him? Was this normal? Maria spun again, and this time she opened her eyes. She looked down at the twins and grinned, a huge, bright smile that lit up her whole face. "Les Gusta," she said softly, though the boys couldn't understand. "You like that?" Matthew reached up with both hands, opening and closing his tiny fists. Maria laughed and scooped him up, swaying with him in her arms. She hummed along to the music, rocking him gently now, her movements slower, softer. Michael began to fuss. His little face scrunched up and his bottom lip trembled. Without missing a beat, Maria bent down and scooped him up too. Now she had both boys, one in each arm, and she danced with them, slowly, gently, like they were the most precious things in the world. David's chest tightened. When was the last time he'd held them like that? When was the last time he'd made them laugh? He couldn't remember. He worked. That's what he did. He built his company. He made money. He provided. That's what fathers did, wasn't it? But standing there, watching Maria dance with his sons in the middle of the night, David felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Shame. Maria began to hum a different tune now. Something slower. A lullaby, maybe. Matthew's head dropped onto her shoulder. His eyes fluttered closed. Michael yawned, his tiny mouth opening wide. Maria swayed back and forth, her eyes closed again, humming that soft, beautiful melody. And then, without warning, she turned. Her eyes opened, and she saw David standing in the doorway. She gasped, her whole body going stiff. The boys stirred in her arms, confused by the sudden stop. "Mr. Chun," Maria whispered, her voice barely audible over the music still playing in her headphones. David stepped into the room. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. "Maria," he said quietly. "What's going on here?" Maria's face went pale. She looked down at the twins, then back at David. I can explain," she stammered. David crossed his arms. "Please do." Maria swallowed hard. She gently placed Michael and Matthew back on the rug. They immediately began to whimper, reaching up for her. She pulled off her headphones and faced David. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice shaking. "I didn't think you'd hear. I've been so careful. I always keep the door closed. I don't know how long?" David interrupted. Maria blinked. "What? How long has this been going on?" Maria looked down at her yellow gloves. Slowly, she pulled them off, one finger at a time. 6 months, she whispered. David's blood ran cold. 6 months, he repeated. "You've been doing this for 6 months?" Maria nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "Every night?" David asked. "Almost," Maria said softly. "Every night they wake up crying. Every night since..." She trailed off. David knew what she was going to say. Since his wife died. The room went quiet except for the soft whimpering of the twins on the floor. David stared at Maria. His mind spun like a tornado, pulling up memories he'd tried so hard to bury. 6 months ago, his wife Emily had died. A car accident. Sudden. Brutal. One moment she was alive, texting him about what to make for dinner. The next moment, she was gone. The twins had been only 2 months old. They would never remember her. David had thrown himself into work after the funeral. What else could he do? Sitting at home, staring at empty rooms, holding 2 crying babies he didn't know how to comfort, it was too much. Too painful. So he hired Maria. She came with perfect references. She was kind, patient, good with children. He paid her well, very well. And then he disappeared into his office, into his meetings, into his empire of steel and glass and money. He told himself the boys were fine. Maria was taking care of them. They had everything they needed. But standing here now, looking at Maria's tear-streaked face and his sons reaching up from the floor, David realized something terrible. He had no idea what his sons needed. "Sit down," David said quietly, pointing to the rocking chair in the corner. Maria hesitated, then sat, her hands twisted together in her lap. David picked up Michael and Matthew. They felt heavier than he remembered. Michael grabbed his robe with tiny fists. Matthew stuck his thumb in his mouth and stared at his father with big, curious eyes. David sat on the edge of one of the cribs, holding both boys awkwardly in his arms. "Tell me everything," he said. Maria took a deep breath. Her voice was shaky at first, but as she spoke, it grew stronger. "It started about a month after I began working here," she said. The boys were teething. Their gums hurt. They would wake up crying, screaming sometimes. Nothing helped. Not the medicine. Not rocking them. Not singing. She paused, looking down at her hands. "One night, I was so tired. I'd been up for 3 hours straight. Michael wouldn't stop crying. Matthew was crying too, just because his brother was crying. I felt like I was going to lose my mind." David's chest tightened. He hadn't known. He slept in the master bedroom on the other side of the house. His door was always closed. He wore earplugs sometimes to block out noise. He'd never heard them crying. "So what did you do?" David asked softly. Maria smiled a little, though her eyes were still wet with tears. I remember my grandmother, she said. When I was little, maybe 5 or 6, I couldn't sleep. I had bad dreams. Nightmares about monsters and shadows. My grandmother would come into my room and she would dance. Dance, David repeated. Maria nodded. She would put on music, old songs from her village in Mexico, and she would dance around my room. Silly dances, happy dances. She would make funny faces and spin around until I laughed. And then, when I was happy and tired from laughing, she would tuck me back into bed, and I would sleep. Maria's voice cracked. She said laughter is the best medicine for fear. And I think babies are afraid too. Afraid of the pain. Afraid of the dark. Afraid of being alone. David looked down at Michael and Matthew. Michael had stopped fussing and was now playing with the belt of David's robe. Matthew's eyes were starting to droop. So you danced, David said. So I danced, Maria confirmed. I put on my headphones so I wouldn't wake you. I put on happy music. And I danced like my grandmother danced. And it worked. The boys stopped crying. They started laughing. And after they laughed for a while, they would get sleepy. And then they would sleep. David felt something hard and heavy settle in his stomach. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. Maria looked up at him, her dark eyes full of something that looked like pity. Tell you what, Mr. Chin? That your sons wake up every night crying? That they need someone to hold them and dance with them and make them feel safe. She shook her head. You were already carrying so much. Your wife, your business. I didn't want to add to your burden. They're not a burden, David said sharply. They're my sons. I know, Maria said gently, but you were hurting. I could see it. Every morning you would come down the stairs looking like you hadn't slept. Your eyes were red. Your hands shook when you held your coffee. You were barely holding yourself together. David wanted to argue. He wanted to say she was wrong. But she wasn't. He had been falling apart. He still was. So you just took care of it, David said. You took care of them. Every night. For 6 months. And you never asked for extra pay. Never complained. Never told me. Maria shrugged. They needed me. What else would I do? Let them cry. David felt his throat close up. He tried to swallow, but it hurt. Why the yellow gloves? He asked, his voice rough. Maria laughed. A real laugh this time, light and surprised. The boys love them, she said. I was wearing them one night when I was cleaning, and Matthew saw them and started laughing. So I kept them on when I danced. They think they're funny. Matthew, hearing his name, looked up at Maria and grinned a gummy, toothless grin. David's heart broke a little. These were his sons, his flesh and blood, and he barely knew them. He knew how much money was in his bank account. He knew the names of every executive in his company. He knew stock prices and profit margins and merger agreements. But he didn't know that his sons love yellow gloves. He didn't know they woke up crying every night. He didn't know that laughter helped them sleep. Maria, David said slowly, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Maria looked at him, waiting. Do you think I'm a bad father? The question hung in the air like smoke. Maria was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood up and walked over to David. She gently took Matthew from his arms and held the baby against her chest. I think you're a father who is grieving, she said softly. I think you're a father who lost the love of his life and doesn't know how to keep going. I think you're a father who is scared. David looked up at her. Scared of what? Scared of loving them too much, Maria said. Scared that if you let yourself love them the way you love their mother, you might lose them too. And you don't think you could survive that. David's breath caught. She was right. God, she was right. Ever since Emily died, he kept the twins at arm's length. He held them sometimes, sure. He checked on them before bed. He made sure they had the best of everything. The best food, the best clothes, the best nanny. But he never let himself really feel it. He never let himself fall in love with them. Because if he did, and something happened to them, I can't lose anyone else, David whispered. I know, Maria said. But Mr. Chun, you're not protecting yourself. You're just missing out. Every day you spend hiding from them is a day you'll never get back. Michael yawned in David's arms and laid his head on his father's chest. David felt the warmth of his son's small body. He felt the rise and fall of Michael's breathing. And for the first time in 6 months, he let himself feel it. The love, the fear, the overwhelming, terrifying, beautiful truth that these two tiny humans were his whole world. David sat there in the peach-colored nursery, holding Michael while Maria held Matthew, and something inside him cracked open. It wasn't a loud crack. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, like ice melting, like a door opening after being locked for a very long time. "I've been running away," David said softly. "Haven't I?" Maria nodded. "Yes, but it's not too late to come back." David looked down at Michael. The baby's eyes were closed now, his breathing slow and steady. His tiny hand still gripped David's robe. "I don't know how to do this," David admitted. "I don't know how to be their father without Emily. She was the one who knew about babies. She read all the books. She knew what to do when they cried. I just stood there feeling useless." "You're not useless," Maria said firmly. "You're learning, and learning takes time." "But 6 months," David said, shaking his head. "I've wasted 6 months." "You haven't wasted anything," Maria said. "You've been surviving. But now it's time to do more than survive. It's time to live." David looked at her, really looked at her. Maria was only 28 years old. She left her family in Mexico to come work in America. She sent most of her money home to help her mother and her younger siblings. She worked 6 days a week, sometimes 7, and every single night. She woke up with his sons and danced with them until they felt safe enough to sleep. She'd given them what he couldn't. No, what he wouldn't. "Maria," David said, his voice thick with emotion, "I'm sorry." Maria tilted her head. "For what?" "For leaving you alone with this. For making you carry everything. For being a coward." "You're not a coward," Maria said. "You're a man who lost his wife. That's not the same thing." "But I still have my sons," David said, "and I've been treating them like they're just another responsibility, another thing on my schedule. Check on the twins before bed. Done. Move on." He felt tears burning in his eyes. "Emily would be so disappointed in me," he whispered. Maria walked over and sat down next to him on the crib's edge. Matthew stirred in her arms but didn't wake up. "Your wife loved you," Maria said gently. "I never met her, but I've seen her pictures all over this house. I've seen the way she looked at you in those photos. That's not the look of a woman who would be disappointed. That's the look of a woman who would understand." "You think so?" David asked. "I know so," Maria said. "And I think she would want you to be happy. I think she would want you to love these boys with everything you have, not because you're replacing her, but because you're honoring her." David closed his eyes and let the tears fall. He cried quietly, careful not to wake Michael. He cried for Emily, for the life they were supposed to have together, for the family they were supposed to build. He cried for all the nights he'd slept through while his sons cried. He cried for all the moments he'd missed. And then, when the tears finally stopped, he took a deep breath. "Things are going to change," David said, "starting tonight." Maria raised her eyebrows. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm not going to hide anymore," David said. "I'm going to be here, really here, for them, for you." "Mr. Chun, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," David interrupted. "And here's how it's going to work. From now on, we share the night duties. You wake up with them one night. I wake up with them the next night, back and forth." "But your work—" "My work can wait," David said firmly. "I have assistants. I have managers. They can handle the early meetings. My sons need me more than my company does." Maria looked surprised. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," David said. He shifted Michael gently in his arms and looked at Maria. "And you're getting 2 full days off every week. No exceptions. Plus a raise. A big one." Maria's eyes went wide. Mr. Chun, that's too much. It's not enough, David said. You've been doing the work of 2 parents for 6 months, and I've been paying you for 1 nanny. That changes now. Maria opened her mouth to argue, but David held up his hand. Please, he said, let me do this. You've given my sons something I couldn't give them. You've given them joy, safety, love. The least I can do is make sure you're taken care of too. Maria's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, she whispered. David smiled, a real smile, the first one in months. No, he said, thank you. They sat there together in the quiet nursery, each holding a sleeping baby. After a moment, David spoke again. Will you teach me? He asked. Teach you what? The dance, David said. I want to learn how to do what you do. I want to be able to make them laugh like that. Maria grinned. You want to learn to dance in yellow gloves at 3 in the morning? Yes, David said seriously. I want to learn everything. Maria laughed softly. Okay, I'll teach you, but I have to warn you. My grandmother always said you need to dance like nobody's watching. Well, David said, looking around the empty nursery, nobody is watching except 2 babies who can't judge me yet. Perfect, Maria said. Together, they stood up and carefully placed Michael and Matthew back in their cribs. The boys didn't wake up. They just curled up in their soft blankets, peaceful and safe. David looked down at them and felt his heart swell with something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope, tomorrow night, David said, I'll take the first shift. Tomorrow night, Maria agreed. She picked up her yellow gloves from the floor and handed them to David. You'll need these, she said with a smile. David took the gloves and slipped them on. They were too small for his hands, but he didn't care. How do I look? He asked. Like a father, Maria said softly. Like a real father. David looked at his sons one more time. Michael, the careful one. The one who watched everything before he acted. Matthew, the fearless one. The one who jumped first and thought later. Both of them were perfect. Both of them were his. And he was never going to run away again. 3 months later, David stood in the nursery at 3 a.m., wearing yellow gloves and headphones, dancing to a cheerful Spanish song, while Michael and Matthew clapped and squealed with laughter. He spun in a circle. He dropped low to the ground. He waved his arms above his head. He looked ridiculous. He didn't care. His sons were laughing, and that was all that mattered. When the song ended, he scooped them both up and held them close. I love you, he whispered to each of them. I love you so much. He thought about Emily. He thought about how she would smile if she could see this moment. And he made her a promise. I'll take care of them. I'll be the father they deserve. I'll dance with them every night if that's what they need. I won't run away anymore. I promise. Michael yawned and laid his head on David's shoulder. Matthew grabbed David's nose and giggled. David laughed, a real deep, joyful laugh. And in that moment, in that peach-colored nursery at 3 in the morning, David Chin finally came home. Oyutiaro. Sometimes the people who save us don't wear capes. Sometimes they wear yellow gloves and dance in the middle of the night when no one is watching. Sometimes they're the quiet heroes who carry our pain without complaint, who love our children like their own, who remind us that it's never too late to start again. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. It helps us share more stories like this one. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Maybe it's a parent who's struggling. Maybe it's someone who feels alone. Maybe it's someone who needs to be reminded that angels walk among us every single day. Take a moment to think about the unsung heroes in your own life, the people who show up when it's hard, the people who love you even when you're falling apart, the people who dance with your children while you learn to dance again yourself. Tell them thank you, because sometimes redemption doesn't come from grand gestures or dramatic changes. Sometimes it comes from simply beginning again, together, one dance at a time. Thank you for reading. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heartwarming stories.